All right, inside the huddle, that was Oliver Camacho's Privilege.
Oh, that was your intro? Was
All
weak
right.
sauce,
Oliver's just waiting for it.
We're crushing it, guys.
I'll give it a
We're
little more
crushing it.
flavor. I'll give it a little more flavor.
Just get a little,
We're a
little
little-
spice.
Okay.
On the Dallas Opera Network, you're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's Opera Box Score. I'm your host, George Cederquist, joined on America's Talk radio show about opera by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, Weston Williams, and Ashlee Hardgrave. All right, this week, we go inside the huddle with America's favorite baritone, Will Liverman. The Ryan Opera Center alum and the Met's first black Papageno will be profiled in the February issue of Opera News. Now, that's the first time one of our interview guests got the OBS bump before the episode even aired. But first, in Chalk Talk, BIPOC artists are challenging NIOP's application fees on the grounds of racial and socioeconomic inequity. That's through an open letter on middleclassartist.com. We're going to talk you through what's at stake for these singers. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, we introduce a new regular feature called Red Card, Yellow Card. We recap which houses are closed or open for business. Yellow means you're playing with a warning. Red, you are out of the game. Speaking of out of the game, the Detroit Red Wings, my Red Wings team, they've played 3 games at home. They are 1-2, including an opening day shutout at home. I think that's
you were so excited last week.
I was.
Buddy,
I'm a fair weather
buddy.
fan. I've now switched my jersey to the Swedish national team. Look at this.
What's their record like?
It
The
looks so
Trey
happy.
Kroner. Well, we won't know until they play in the Olympics. Oliver Camacho.
You look like an IKEA employee wearing that.
What's new with you, Oliver?
Well, I was at the gym and I saw that there's some gymnastics happening. I don't know what level of gymnastics it was, but I was very excited. And other
Just
sports.
like in a gym, someone was just doing push-ups.
I was
You're
at
like,
the
"That's
gym.
sports."
No, I was at
Just
my
loshing,
gym,
just creeping.
and they have a bunch of TVs that play various sports. And I happened
gotcha.
to be at the gym while gymnastics was being broadcast, and I felt very seen because that's exactly what I like to look at while I'm exercising.
He does
And-
have a sixth sense for gymnasts. If there are gymnasts anywhere, Oliver knows.
He finds them.
Matt Cummings, how's your sports life?
I mean, Pittsburgh's still smarting, although I did find out that my future brother-in-law recently ran into Mike Tomlin and invited him to play frisbee golf with my entire family. So if that happens, we might have a new guest at the wedding.
Ooh.
I would. First of all, A, yes, but B, a new guest on Opera Box Score. Huh? Hello?
True.
That would be incredible. Weston, can you imagine a better guest than Pittsburgh Steelers coach Mike Tomlin on the show?
Nick Saban, obviously. Roll Tide. You know my whole spiel. Rest in peace, Ohio State. You just couldn't make the cut.
Lots of sports happening in the past week. We got lots of opera for you on the show. This week, let's get to it. Let's talk some opera.
Chalk Talk on Opera Box Score.
A recent article on middleclassartist.com highlighted not only racial inequity, but also socioeconomic inequity relating to recent auditions at the NIOP organization. Ashlee Hardgrave, talk us through the letter and let's unpack the impact that it may have.
I sure can. So for those of you listening at home that might not know, the NIOP stands for the New York International Opera Auditions.
We think it's
We're
We
pretty sure
can't
that's
find
what it
that in
means.
writing
This is-
anywhere, but
this
that
is a
is
true
our
dive.
best guess.
This is a true story. I Googled NIOP because I assumed it was a dumb question. I was like, I don't know what it stands for. So I Googled, what does NIOP stand for? And it just came up and said, NIOP stands for New York International Opera Auditions. I'm like, no, it doesn't. So we
It'd be
assume
NIOPA,
it's the
then.
OP,
Or
but,
Nayoa.
that is a minor criticism of many criticisms we're about to have for this organization. So continue, Ashlee.
It was quite the thing. So the letter that was on middleclassartist.com comes from the Latinx Artist Society in Opera, or LASSO, 1S. And I'm going to do a little bit of quick quoting from the article so that you get the gist. We're not going to read the whole thing. But the nutshell is, One prominent example of what we wish to see change is the predatory practice of organizations that charge outrageous fees, especially during a pandemic. These practices significantly affect Afro-Latin, Latinx, Black, Indigenous, and peoples of color. We want to specifically bring attention to the NIOP competition. Charging $150 to $200 to perform for panelists who are not incurring expenses for venue, lodging, or travel does not make sense, because this year, sidebar, NIOP's auditions were all virtual. NIOP then charges an extra $75 for the semifinals portion of the competition. Lasso asks that NIOP stand by their transparency. Why did you charge these predatory fees for an online competition? Where is this money going? And why did you charge a second fee in the semifinals? We hope that you reflect on your business model and that you consider the ways in which your competition's application process has added barriers to those who wish only to be heard in the world of opera. If you wish to continue this conversation, please contact us. So, I bet we have feelings. Weston, do you have feelings?
I have a feeling or two. I can dig something out of there. First of all, when I saw this open letter, I thought it tied in extremely well with what we were talking about last week. If you missed that episode, we were talking about, what we're thinking of doing going forward as artists, as professionals in the opera world. What needs to change, what things the pandemic has brought forward that we realize now are not really acceptable. And really these audition fees are really in this category. The fact that these fees persisted even during a pandemic when there was no excuse like, oh, we have to book a hotel, oh, we have to rent this room, oh, we have to do this. It really speaks to the fact that the vast majority of these kinds of fees are unnecessary. And this kind of is one of those things that felt normal only because it's so prevalent, and it still is. But this is one of the things we have to stand up and say, no, this is financial gatekeeping. If there is a genuine need to have some extra money paying for the competition, it should not come from artists who have been in school for years and have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt. It keeps away people of color, people of different classes who don't have family money to pay for these things, to live on starvation wages. And it also perpetuates the perception of opera as being an irrelevant entertainment only for the super rich. And whatever costs that do actually exist that are used as excuses to charge young singers with these kinds of audition fees, whatever costs that do actually exist need to be paid for by sources other than the auditionees, period, in my opinion.
You bring up opera, which is... It's right on that opera is one of the few art forms that actually still does charge these application fees.
Absolutely,
sometimes.
yeah.
In pre-pandemic times, you would be charged application fees without even being guaranteed a live audition. Mm-hmm. And that was, even more unethical, that they would take your money to not listen to your pre-screening, as we saw from an earlier middle class artist blog from this year. And it's just cynical. It's cashing in on the greenest and most optimistic and most hopeful members of the musical community, the people who want the most for opera to survive, for both selfish and unselfish reasons. They want opera to survive, and these companies have decided that instead of nurturing them, they are gonna just cash in. Yeah. And NIOPS, I would say, it has a particular reputation for being a bit of a black box, in that it's this big gathering of in normal times, gathering in New York of agents from European companies, and the idea is you could get a fest contract or something like that out of an audition like this, but no one really knows how you do that, or how often you do that, or how much you even have to pay. This lack of transparency regarding what your money is even going to is nothing new, and it is even more unexcusable in times like these.
I would agree. I do want to jump in here just for a hot second and make sure. I said that this was a letter that was put together by LASSO, but I want to make sure to mention the two other organizations as well. So it's the Latinx Artist Society in Opera, which is LASSO. It was also co-signed by the Black Opera Alliance and Latino Women in Opera. So all three of these orgs came together, which I think is really great. There's strength in numbers. I really appreciate the solidarity. George, any thoughts?
Well, Ashlee, I'll throw it back to you in a second. Here's what I don't get is the idea of charging $150, or it was reduced to $75 for that first round, only to then ding those people that make it into the next round an additional $75. Congratulations, you made it to the next round. We need another $75. What's up with the nickel and diming? Here's the thing. You go, and if I go watch a hockey game, remembering the days when we could go watch hockey. You go watch a hockey game, you buy a couple tickets, you buy a couple hot dogs, you buy a couple beers, it starts to add up. I just hope that the folks that did go through this program at least are going to get a souvenir cup.
Oliver, would you design the souvenir cups for now?
I just want to say that we're recording on
opera.
Martin Luther King's birthday, observed the Monday the 18th. And there are, just by nature of who has written this open letter, there is a social justice implication in that the people who can afford to pay these application fees typically are not the people of color, the people who are, that's a broad generalization, but that's just the truth about what's happening in our business right now. So it is silencing the voices of people who might not have other opportunities, and it's already expensive. And I'm just tired of, this is something, I feel like we've been talking about this for months now, of these organizations that are still behaving in predatory ways. And it's like, can't you guys read the room a little bit and see what is necessary here? And I mean, even before the pandemic, I have to say that I remember being in the rat race of trying to become a professional singer and hearing about NIOP and how it was something on the calendar, the yearly audition calendar for people to aspire to, knowing that they were going to spend money and fly to New York and have to rent a hotel room and find a place to practice and all this whole ordeal about how to do NIOP. And now that it's ostensibly easier for people to do NIOP from wherever they are living because of the pandemic, it still has these stupid obstacles. It's like, give me a break, This was the time for you guys to shine and show that we actually care about you. We really are interested in hearing you, not in nickeling and diming you.
I would agree. There is one bit of phrasing in the letter that I will push back on, and I'll tell you why. Stay with me. I'm not sure I totally agree with the phrasing. These practices are geared towards the preying on the underprivileged and keep the wealthy in our industry thriving. It's a great lead-in. I think it's well written, but I honestly think there's a possibility that these choices might be even more considerate. These organizations haven't, in my opinion, probably haven't even bothered to think about the experience of the talent that they're trying to mine. Most of the folks running these organizations, I know there are a couple of singers at NIOP, but it's not everybody. And I can bet lots of money, maybe a full audition fee's worth, that these guys have not lived the hustle that is balancing those expenses while, trying to live. I don't think they have ever had to attempt to pay for rent and a voice lesson and an urgent care visit because you don't have health insurance all in the same week, only to be rewarded with another bill for doing well in the competition. So, okay. There might be some people that do. And those folks if they do in fact have experience on the other side of the table and they turn a blind eye, and in some cases, and I've seen this in social media, try to justify those expenses, well, I believe there is a small place in an unpleasant environment for them. And may they eventually feel the amount of dignity commensurate with their behavior. Can you see how I'm trying not to do my typical bad language? I'm trying to edit,
You're so clean for a new year.
Family friendly.
New year, new Ashlee. No, but I do totally agree. I think that for companies like this and for NIOP in particular, it's easy money. There's always going to be a new crop of singers who's willing to pay it because they think that it's what they have to do.
That's the culture,
to get to the next step. So why would they bother to think about any other possible opportunities rather than just taking the easy money on the table? And we're clearly at an impasse. We've been talking about this for months, years.
We have. I do feel though that there is an additional layer of visibility in letters like this and people being more open to talk about it, the emergence of a site like Middle Class Artists that seems to be consistently calling this stuff out, where we were just doing it in the hallways of NOLA Studios for 15 years. So I do look forward to NIOP avoiding the PR nightmare that is staying silent on this issue. I look forward to whatever their response is going to be. We will be listening. We will be watching. We will be waiting.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Inside the Huddle, that was the privilege of our own Tom Brady, Oliver Camacho.
Earlier today, I spoke to the baritone of the moment. I mean, he's got so much going on. He is in the cast of Highway 1 USA of Opera Theater St. Louis. He's workshopping his own show called Factotum based on Barbara Seville, which we'll talk about. His second album, recorded on the CD label, is coming out in February. He is going to be featured in the next issue of Opera News magazine, a spotlight on him. He was in the cast of Akhenaten, and we talked about Akhenaten for months and months. And he made his debut recently, before pre-pandemic times, as Papageno at the Met, the first Black Papageno. So he's got a lot going on, and COVID has not slowed him down. And we begin this conversation talking about a little bit of his origin story.
You know, when I first started singing, you know, it was about just getting my name out there and just surviving and doing the auditions and competitions and like, but there came a time where it was just like, okay, you know, I've started to get my career going, and it's more than that. Like, and of course, I mean, being an opera singer is something that's, you know, so meaningful for me to be able to, you know, use my gift and share my gift on the stage and work with people and to create something special. And, you know, opera's, you know, amazing. It's what I love. But beyond that, it's, you know, I started thinking like, what do I want to, you know, leave behind? You know, do I want to just keep, you know, singing these roles and go from place to place, which is, you know, amazing. I get to see a lot of new cities, but like, I want to use my platform for something else too. And, you know, I got into opera because I saw some folks that were on stage that looked like me, like Lawrence Brownlee and Denise Graves, and like, you know, folks like this that have paved the way so I can be on these stages. You know, they really inspire me. So I wanted to also use my platform, you know, to encourage other young artists of color and be an advocate for diversity, inclusion in the arts, and, you know, bring to light, you know, other Black composers as much as I can, and sing and perform their works. And so that's just sort of like how over the years how that developed and how the album came about. I wanted to push this or make an album featuring all Black composers, because I think a lot of times, you know, when we listen to Black composers or their music, it's always, you know, and I love spirituals. Spirituals are like my favorite because I grew up with a lot of gospel, and to me, spirituals sort of like is that perfect link between, you know, classical singing and gospel kind of all merge into one. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of, you know, times we put, you know, composers on platforms and recognizing their works with spirituals, but, you know, there are a lot of great composers that wrote a lot of great art songs. So I wanted to make an album specifically highlighting their contributions in art song. And it was a labor of love. It was something that I just reached out to Jim Ginsburg about, like my program idea, and pitched it to him. And it was actually a connection through an album that I did I just was like an appearance with Nicole Cabell and Allison Cambridge. They had a Sisters in Song. Yeah. And so I came on to do the Cozy Trio, and that's how I got linked up with CD Records.
Honorary sister.
Yeah, exactly. Honorary sister. And so that was, you know, my introduction to them. And so that's, I pitched this project idea to Jim a few years ago, and
Jim Ginsburg, who's the CEO of CD record label here in Chicago. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. And he went for it. And then, you know, from there we, you know, just did the program, and we were able to record actually during COVID times safely in Indiana. And then here we are.
With your collaborator Sean,
so Paul Sanchez is the pianist, mm-hmm. and the album actually features a piece called Two Black Churches that I commissioned for Sean O'Pebolo. And going back, he's the guy who I got, myself, Sean, and Paul, we worked together on Sean's first album of Spiritual. So that's how I, got to be connected with them. And I really loved his writing. I really loved how he took those spirituals and made them like really his own, and the way he just brought them to life in a different way with his writing, specifically in the piano parts. So I really wanted to feature him in something that was meaningful to me, and to just telling a Black story about these girls, the Birmingham bombing, which is something that's so tragic, but then doing a parallel to the Charleston shooting to sort of show how Black people in America are still, after all this time, having to deal with the racism and being for me growing up in the South, especially dealing with that myself, and being stereotyped, being having people look at me different. And so all those things, was the inspiration behind Two Black Churches. And that was a focal point. We just sort of built a program around that.
But are you also playing on one of these tracks, the last one?
Yeah. That was another source of inspiration. I was watching this documentary about the Birmingham bombing, and they played this song at the end called Birmingham Sunday. And I was like, oh, I gotta there's something about the song just really struck me. And I was playing around with it and did sort of my own arrangement. And so for the last, I think, song in the album, I'm playing and singing for myself this song Birmingham Sunday, which kind of just wraps up the whole album and kind of touches on the bombing again, but also more generally, the song goes back to, and the choir kept singing of freedom, and to me that's sort of a central point of the album. So I was happy to be able to have that be included as well. It's a special piece.
Well, I'm a huge admirer of your sitting at the piano and singing, and it's actually very kind of aggravating to me that somebody is as talented as you. But like you have some of these videos that are available on your social media, some of which are very like authentic and sincere, and for lack of a better word, soulful. I don't know if you prefer a different word, but I'm just gonna say
yeah.
Okay. Can you talk about your training as a musician? I don't want to talk too much about like your necessarily education, but like how you come to sit at the piano and be able to sing like that, and to be able to be in front of a microphone, in front of a camera, which is something that we're all getting used to during COVID. But it seems like you were comfortable with that. Like 7 years ago, you were already doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's for me, like with my background, I grew up with a big gospel background, and in the Pentecostal church basically means no sheet music, all ear, all off the cuff, all like we don't know what. I mean, of course, choir. We have choir practice and all that. But like there are songs that we sing, but there's a lot of improv in church, and lots of people will just get up and sing a song, and you just go with it. So I grew up in that sort of environment of just, going with the flow. And I learned how to play gospel music at a young age and listening to it early on. So that sort of gave me the improv ability and, messing around on the piano in that way. And I also did take, music, classical piano as well. So kind of, being able to read a little bit, and also improv gave me that skill set for that. And yeah, I always, when I started out performing, I didn't have a lot of work actually. So I just spent my time, it's like, well, one of the things, I think about the greats and like how they leave behind their legacy, and what do they have? They have recordings, and people go to those, YouTube sites and listen to folks. It's just like, okay, well, I should just do, find some rep that I love and record it, and just get it out there that kind of way. And sort of that way you sort of control when people type in your name and see what comes up, like the information and the things that people see. So I spent a lot of time, a few years ago, investing money in like project recordings, and I did this competition where I did like a Deutsche Grammophon test recording. So I have some of that all online, and that's all kind of how that got started. And I always make it a goal of mine every year to like keep just periodically putting out, you know, new videos, new art song things, and just like continuing to get that out there because it's so important these days, especially with COVID times.
Yeah, I mean, you're uniquely prepared to be a
Yeah.
working musician in this time.
Yeah.
If you had already experience with recording equipment and having the
Yeah,
camera trained on you, and it's an entirely
Mhm.
different topic. And I mean, I would love to
Yeah,
talk about
it's
that with you because
Mhm.
you are so good at social media. Well, maybe we'll get back to it, but no, I think that what you did before was always really engaging. I think there's a video of you crack open your score before the first day of rehearsal.
Oh god.
Maybe we'll link to it, or maybe we'll cut it. Actually, there's no rights on that. That's like, we can get your permission right here. We have permission to share that.
I mean, it's like a parody of another actual rap song, but
Okay.
there's
Maybe we'll get
no
flagged.
Yeah.
No,
I
but
think,
that
Mhm.
is that video particularly cracks me up because it's the way you hear people talking to each other sometimes
Mhm.
like in the lounges of conservatories, you know, but it's not
Exactly.
something that usually hear available to a wider audience. I don't know what has been some of the reaction you've been gotten from, you know, the organizations you work for and your colleagues about some of that stuff.
Oh, I think for a lot of people it's unexpected.
Mhm.
I know it started, you know, these funny, like silly videos just started out, I don't know, you're just bored and you just take a song and make it relatable and talk about things that people can relate to. And that's just sort of how it came up. And you know, how we're always talking like, gosh, this person was so unprepared. They didn't know their music. Like, how long have they had this, you know, like, and so I just kind of took all that information and just made this sort of song that people can, everyone always has that person in the cast. And I think, you know, people are always, you know, organizations are, you know, surprised, hopefully in a positive way, you know, when they see this type of material. And it's just, it also shows like the fun side too, you know, and not to take things, you know, kind of just be light, you know, to, I kind of make that an important part of who I am, along with like all of the very, you know, serious subject matter that's on my page, but also like, you know, I love The Office. I love to laugh. I love, you know, to just be genuine and joyful. So that's always the inspiration behind those types of things. And I
Yeah.
know one day I might be my own. I'm always worried that I'm going to be the victim of my own song one day when I have a gig and I just have like no time to prepare and I'm going to show up and then that song is just going to
Well,
come back and bite me.
we know of very famous artists who show up to rehearsal and they have to have the music staff teach them their role, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Hello? It's a real
so
thing.
I'm going to rewind a little bit and talk about Factotum. And this is a project that you're doing with Lyric Opera Chicago and elsewhere, right? Other places besides Lyric?
I mean, I would hope so one day.
Okay. So it's being
Let's start with
produced
Lyric. Yeah.
at Lyric
Yeah.
Unlimited.
Mhm.
And you mentioned Larry Brownlee, and I have to say that one of the best things that I've ever seen done as a sort of outreach
Mhm.
initiative was or is the Larry Brownlee and Friends concert series.
Yeah.
And the one I saw, I've talked about on the show many times. It was in the lobby of the Civic Opera House with Solomon Howard and Whitney Morris and Christopher Kenny.
Mhm.
And it was everything. I mean, it was
Yeah.
arias, it was a little bit of show tunes, it was gospel, it was Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
And it was just joyful, but also very
Mhm.
moving and exciting. And
Mhm.
it was very unpretentious.
Mhm.
And at some point in that show, Larry said to the people in the audience, which are mostly Black people, I have to say, which was great, you know.
Yeah.
Go into into the auditorium, peek your head in there and look inside. That's where we normally perform. And I would love if you came and supported us doing that as well, you know? And it was just so explicit and honest and authentic. Like, we need you to show up, you know, like we're, as organizations, we're trying to figure out how to bring in new audiences. And this is what I'm trying, you know? So can you talk about Factotum in that context?
Yeah. The Factotum, I mean, that's, well, when I first had the idea of it, when I was starting to work more, I was doing a lot of Barber Sevilles. And every time when I go travel to a new place, like, I always got to find the Black barbershop. Hello. Because like, that's just what you have to do. And when I would sit there, I would just observe a lot and think like, man, this would be kind of a really cool to take Barber of Seville and update it and put it in a black barbershop, because, you know, it made me think about my own experience, you know, in black barbershops and how it's more than just a haircut. It's like an experience and a big part of black culture. So to answer your question, the factotum, I mean, that was like the idea of it, but the story of it and why this opera is here is just to help, also in that same vein, bring more diverse audiences to the opera house by telling, you know, stories that they can relate to and understand, and also an uplifting and fun story too. I mean, there's lots and lots of great new works that I've seen and been a part of out there, but I think, you know, we have a lot of serious shows that are just like so, you know, heavy and like, ugh. And I'm like, man, we need to laugh sometime and, you know, have some sort of, you know, something that shows Black people in an uplifting light. And I thought, what better place than the barbershop and taking these different styles of music
Can you be explicit? What styles of music are you sampling?
We're using, we're using, so each character sort of has their style that they use it as sort of is their theme. So, you know, there's hip hop, trap, there's neo
hip hop
soul.
trap. Can you explain that? I'm sorry, I don't know.
Hip hop and trap is sort of like in that world of hip hop. So like hip hop, rap, and neo soul and R&B, funk and gospel. And there's a barbershop quartet who kind of serve as the Greek chorus that help move the plot along and comment on the story. And so they're sort of like that connective tissue within all that. And, you know, this is sort of like when I love that you talk about the Larry Brownlee and Friends concert, because, you know, classical singers are some of the best trained singers. And in addition to that, I think, you know, there are a few folks who also can delve and dip into different genres while still keeping their, you know, technique or whatever, but like being able to like...
Not everybody.
Yeah, not everyone, that's for sure. But, you know, the folks that can do it is remarkable to be able to witness that. So like the factotum is just sort of taking all these genres and implementing the classical voice as a way to sort of connect the dots for folks that, you know, maybe wouldn't go to the opera, but, you know, would look at a story like factotum and see the relatability to that, and then, you know, go watch it, you know. So that's sort of the inspiration.
You're saying that the other musicians are using their own voices and they're mic'd per se, and you have like, what are you sampling tracks? Is there a band? Like, how is it? What does the end project look like? You know,
the end project looks, I mean, we hope for full production, and those are a lot of things we're talking about now because, you know, we just did a workshop of it. We learned a lot. It was a lot of fun. And, you know, that's the joy and beauty of these genre blends, is to, you know, figure out like what's the best way to make everyone successful and to show this music in the best light, with it being classically sung. So there's just, it just blends all these things together. And, you know, we're at that point now, based on what we learned from the workshop, of like, you know, do we need mic? Do we need, like, what do we need band wise? And like sort of taking it and elevating it to that next spot to hopefully have another workshop with, when it's safe with COVID, to have, you know, the instruments and seeing really what we have with that. So it's just been fun to.
But your plan is to market it to opera audiences and not maybe try to establish it as like a theater piece or as a music theater piece, and then just sneak the opera in there, you know?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. I mean, the thing about the factotum, I wanted it to be the type of show that could live in maybe in different worlds. Like I could see it on a musical theater stage or a theater stage. I think it has that sort of, I don't know. I think there's a lot of things in it that where it could live on those different stages. But of course, the main focus, of course, is being an opera advocate as well, having this show live in opera houses and having, you know, more diverse audiences come in and you know, and experience classical music in a different way, you know?
So when I begin to think about all of these pieces of your brand, for lack of a better word, your kind of identity, politics, and your social media presence, and even the very specific work that you do as a composer and as a musician, it all begins to feel like you are like, you want to be like this advocate teacher in the opera community. Can you think back about your own training? Did you have any experience? I know we talked briefly about the governor's school, where you felt that, like, I don't know, that passion for teaching, even if you're not like specifically going to be a teacher per se, but the idea of like that kind of sharing and feeling the passion about advocating for what we do as musicians.
Yeah, I think probably hit me. It's probably in my DNA a little bit because my dad was a teacher. He was a elementary school teacher, and a lot of that I think rubbed off on me. I don't think I knew I had it really at the beginning when I was focusing mainly on performing, but especially now during this pandemic, we're all sitting around. I've had a lot of time to really work with the Governor's School for the Arts, is where I went to high school and worked and did some master classes
with Ryan Speedo Green and Frederick Ballantyne.
we all were there at the same time. Yeah, it's crazy. This little school in Norfolk, Virginia. And it really just sort of dawned on me that, even before then, as I was going throughout my career, realizing the importance of being an advocate and using your platform to help, continuing all together to forge a path forward in terms of, inclusion and diversity, not just on the stage, but, in administration as well. And really making we're making these statements, but what are we doing actually to make that change that we want to see in this field? Because there's lots of potential. There's so many great minds and great talent out there. We have everything. It's just like, what are we doing to make this go forward? And that's like a big part of my mission, is encouraging and helping people as best as I can, who are behind me, and telling them about my story, and encouraging them to speak up and use their voice and be comfortable in their skin, because it's what I was trained, by my high school teacher, Robert Brown, instilled that in me. And he was, he's like a musical father to all of us. He passed away sadly in 2008, I think. But Ryan Speedo Green, Freddie will tell you, it's in his book, actually, in Ryan's book, that, Mr. Robert Brown was, a major influence, because he, is a 6'4" Black man. We loved about him. He was like super funny, but also would come down with like the hammer of justice if you didn't have that music learned. Like that's where we learned that, like that discipline. And to
crack open your score before the first day rehearsal.
Look, you can mess around and not have that music learned if you want. You're going to be put on full blast. Like Brown didn't care who it was.
Were you at that performance of Carmen that Ryan talked about, where he met Denise Graves backstage?
I think that may have been a year before me, or it could have been maybe my freshman year. But like we would always take trips to Governor's School or to the Met, and yeah, that's for me as well. That's where I really had a thought, like, man, this is a really cool art form. I was just amazed at how we were sitting in the nosebleeds, and we could hear those singers without microphones, just as clear as day up there. I'm like, how are they doing this? How are they making this sound? It's just something so unnatural and so different and so otherworldly that was like, it's cool.
But at that time, whatever this was in the early aughts or in the
2000s,
in the late 90s, maybe. Yeah. Did you also, as a high school student, understand that you were a minority in the audience, not just on stage?
It's weird. I had kind of a reverse thing happen, because Governor's School was super diverse, and there were a lot of Black singers, opera singers in that program, because we're all from the area. And Governor's School is a huge advocate for, it was just one of the most diverse schools in dance. we have the, Adrienne Warren, who's Tina, and Tina Turner went to Governor's School. And lots of folks that so I was just like growing up, I was always surrounded by
people of color.
People of color that were super
experience
talented.
until I went to college.
Exactly. So like it started off like, whoa, this is what it's like, and then it was like, oh wait, it's not really like. So I had like the reverse experience of really getting that at an early age and thinking this is the norm. But then going out there, the further you go up, you realize like, oh, it's kind of not as diverse as I thought.
Wider and wider the higher it goes.
Yeah. Start off like all your family and friends and parents are all at the concerts, and it's like super fun and like people are really into it. And then like over time, it was like, okay, it's just it was interesting to think about that.
Which is why I think it's so refreshing for at least us in the community to see that you have maintained yourself, and especially the stuff you do on social media is like so you, and it doesn't feel like you're trying to please any particular agency or organization. But we're running out of time, and I wanted to give you a chance to do two things. One, to introduce a piece on your new album, Dreams of a New Day, which comes out February 12th. I assume it'll be on streaming platforms, but you can also spend the money and buy the CD, folks.
Yeah, right. Old school now. CDs are like so
maybe one of the Burley pieces, since that will probably be public domain for us, or something else if you want.
Yeah. Just introduce it.
Yeah, talk about it, like why you chose it. What maybe is your
Well, I mean, Burley is like, you can't have, I mean, for me at least, I couldn't have an album of Black composers without mentioning him. I mean, he's one of the most prolific, he's like one of the OGs, as it were, like, and a lot of people don't know that he's just such a great writer. I mean, like, he's known, I mean, what he did with spirituals and writing them in the way which gave a platform for Black soloists to be able to perform spirituals classically, which is amazing. And we should celebrate that. But he also wrote a lot of great, he wrote art songs. And a lot of people don't know the 5 songs of Lawrence Hope. Actually, it was introduced to me. I didn't learn about this in college. Like, it was introduced to me when I was at Lyric, and I sang it for WFMT like years and years ago. But it's, it's one of my favorite art song cycles, and it was something that I just had to have on the program. So, yeah.
Call me not to the lotus lake, that drooping fishes hide. What if my latent youth awake and will not be denied? Attempt me not, for I am not strong. Thy mouth is a blooded kiss. My days are empty, my nights are long. Why is a thing so sweet so wrong? Why is a thing so sweet so wrong? As thy temptation is.
Thanks again to Will Liverman. That was from his recording Dreams of a New Day, which is out February 12th on the Say D label. That was from Henry Burleigh's 5 songs of Lawrence Hope, the 4th song, Among the Fuchsias. Will Liverman with pianist Paul Sanchez.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Both Riccardo Muti and the International Conference of Symphony and Opera Musicians has released a statement in support of the musicians of the Met Orchestra. Muti appealed to the company to, quote, give back to the musicians of the Met the dignity which we all deserve and the hope that they can soon return to share with us their art. ICSOM directed their statement more towards CEO Peter Gelb, quote, what he is attempting, using the pandemic as surreptitious cover to cut wages, erode working conditions, and eviscerate union contracts, is reprehensible.
A new COVID study in Germany looks into the risk of infection for visitors to concert halls, theaters, and opera houses. Scientists at the Fraunhofer Heinrich Institute concluded that as long as there is complete air exchange with outside air at least every 20 minutes, a superspreader event is theoretically impossible, though mask wearing and distancing in corridors is still necessary to keep audiences safe.
Soprano Karen Slack pays tribute to black women in a new film entitled #SayTheirNames. The film explores the lives of Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, and contemporary activist and scholar Kimberly Crenshaw. Over the course of the project, Slack, quote, found that most of the social justice movements were started by women, and black women in particular. Say Their Names is available for free on YouTube.
France cares about the arts, and it turns out that it cares about its artists too. The country guarantees employment benefits for about 250,000 beneficiaries who work in the arts. Quote, "We thank all of those who have created and innovated during these difficult times," says French President Emmanuel Macron. "Culture is absolutely essential to our lives as citizens. It's nice to feel appreciated."
Baritone Stephen Labrie is a freelancer in New York. His friend and fellow baritone Jarrett Ott has a full-time job singing in Germany. Both are about the same age and have similar training. One has been based in the US during the pandemic, the other in Europe. As the coronavirus spread, that made all the difference. You can read about the tale of two barahunks by Zachary Wolfe at the New York Times.
Hunken tenor Jonas Kaufmann has concerns for the mental health of performing artists amid the pandemic. During a concert in Madrid, Kaufmann said, quote, "It's not easy to bring this up in public, but I know a number of suicides in our family of musicians where they see no future." The German tenor mentioned the lack of perspective, help, and support for certain vulnerable souls who see no way out. He took the opportunity to appeal to authorities, urging them to reopen places of culture and to be inventive to keep art alive. If you or someone you know is experiencing feelings of hopelessness, distress, or suicidal thoughts in the U.S., you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255.
British conductor Sir Simon Rattle will leave his post leading the London Symphony Orchestra in 2023 to take over as chief conductor for the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra. Rattle has long been a vocal critic of Brexit, but maintained that his departure is for personal reasons, as it will enable him to, quote, "better manage the balance of my work and be close enough to home to be present for my children in a meaningful way."
All right, let's kick off that new micro segment in the 2-minute drill. Yellow card, red card. This week's yellow cards.
Monaco. Opera de Monte Carlo has moved their start times earlier in the day to 2 p.m. for January's Thais to comply with the country's COVID curfew.
Bulgaria. Juan Diego Flores did perform a concert on January 14th with the Sofia Philharmonic. It happened. Ashlee saw it on Facebook.
Florida. As of this recording, Opera Orlando is still going forward with Hansel and Gretel at the end of January.
In this week's red cards, Austria. Federal authorities have closed all cultural venues until at least February 28th.
Germany. Deutsches Nationaltheater, Staatskapelle Weimar, Oper Frankfurt, and Staatsoper Stuttgart are closed until at least April. Bayerische Staatsoper is currently closed through February. Dresden has canceled the remainder of its 2021 season with an alternative schedule beginning in April.
England. Royal Opera House Covent Garden has canceled March performances of Tosca.
Spain. Bilbao Opera has canceled the whole February run of L'Elisir d'Amore. Javier Camarena's second Barcelona concert set for January 21st has also been canceled.
Switzerland. Zurich, Grand Theatre de Genève, and Theatre Basel are all closed through February.
Italy. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency through April 30th.
And France. Paris has canceled Capriccio and the whole run of Die Zauberflote. The soonest they'll return is mid-February.
Exit stage right. Conductor Andrew Greenwood has succumbed to cancer. He joined the music staff of Covent Garden in 1977 and went on to be the chorus master at Welsh National Opera through the 1980s. He then embarked on an international career, including tenures with Opera Cologne, Royal Danish Opera, and the International Istanbul Music Festival.
Australian opera director Elijah Mushinsky has died at 75. Also a very successful theater and television director, Mushinsky made his operatic debut in 1975 at Covent Garden and went on to stage productions at ENO, Welsh National Opera, Scottish Opera, Opera Australia, La Scala, the Wiener Staatsoper, and the Met.
The beloved Santa Fe Opera prop director Randy Lutz died last week at 62. The company's properties director since 1993, Lutz received a national award from the United States Institute for Theater Technology for his professional mentoring.
And on this day, January 18th, in 1656, it was the first performance of Cavalli's Statira Principessa di Persia in Venice. In 1685, Lully's opera Roland premiered at Versailles. In 1823, it was the first performance of Mercadante's Didone Abbandonata in Turin. In 1835, it was the birth of one of the Mighty Five, the Russian composer Cederquist. In 1844, the first performance of that hit Caterina Cornaro by Donizetti in Naples, your favorite, Ashlee. In 1841, the birth of the French composer Emmanuel Chabrier. In 1871, it was the first performance of Giovanni Bottesini's opera Ali Baba in London. In 1873, it was the birth of the Wagnerian tenor Alfred von Bari in Malta, one for Weston. Another one for Weston in 1930, the first performance of The Nose by Shostakovich in Leningrad. And in 1956, it was the birth of the German tenor Christoph Pregardin.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
The Met has just been doing some things, and all of these letters that people are just writing, opining all about how the Met's doing a terrible job, and Peter Gelb specifically is just it really does make me feel a little bit better that we are not the only ones who are saying, hey, Met management, maybe chill out a little bit.
But on the other hand, is the only thing that Riccardo Muti can do to help this situation to write yet another heartfelt letter?
He has written so many over the past year.
But
He's so bored.
It was delicate and heartfelt. ICSOMs, however, a little less heartfelt.
Yes.
That
a little
one
nastier, a little more specific, more Ashlee going after Tom Brady energy in that one, I think.
It was a little more, let's say I resonated more with the ICSOM one, so much so that my own camera is going into soft focus with my rage. So, yeah.
Man, Matt Cummings taking everybody to task. Matt, you going to take this study coming out of Germany to task?
It's not that the study is bad in and of itself. It's just that I don't think that the article writing up the study really takes into account how specific these findings might be. Because whether or not this is from the Konzerthaus Dortmund and German institutes that are looking at one specific concert house and determined that concert house had good enough ventilation that you could have people there without significant risk of a COVID outbreak. And that is really great for that one concert house, but that is not necessarily going to be, for lack of a better word, transmissible to other theaters.
I think I just got the shivers.
It's like watching movies of people in crowds. You're like, I can't do it anymore.
It's absolutely
true. Oh God, that's so real.
Oliver, are you shivering over there?
I'm shivering thinking about Stephen Labrie and Jared Ott, who are two gorgeous men who Zachary Wolf knows his audience by profiling.
The audience of Oliver specifically.
Well, I think Zachary Wolf is a little fruity. I think it's pretty safe to assume that. So he knows his readers, and this was a really great piece. And actually, I'm so glad that it appeared in a platform as big as the New York Times, so people could really read about the financial situations of artists. And we know middle-class artists have been doing this work forever now. But to see it in a place like New York Times where more people will learn about it, and to see what the difference is between being an American artist who loses all their jobs and being an artist who is hired by German houses who have a social safety net, much like the one that's being provided for artists in France.
Ashlee, these social safety nets, and how does that intersect with our red cards and our yellow cards?
You know, the nutshell was that we kept seeing so many line items to report on that, where this house is open, this house is closed, this country's totally on lockdown, this one seems to be apparently fine and in a different part of the planet. So we just
or they're
decided
Florida.
They're Florida.
That's the other thing that I think is hilarious. Number one, I think it's going to be interesting to watch this space and see how these countries move and shift out of the red and the yellow categories. I also think it's real funny that right now the majority of red cards is basically all of the opera-going world. And the three yellows right now are Bulgaria, Monaco, and Florida. So watch this space.
Yeah. Good. I mean, I really do wish them the best down in Florida, but I would encourage all of our Floridian listeners to probably not go to those performances. Just don't do it. It's a bad idea.
Well, and of course in soccer, the yellow cards, you get one, it's a warning, you get a second yellow card that then turns into a red, and then your team is down to 10 men. So we'll see if some of these opera houses are going to pile misery.
Or in Weston's case, you get a scarf.
I get a scarf. I
scarf.
looked through my entire wardrobe in here, and I couldn't find anything that was red or yellow.
We need an opera box score props master.
Even though I can now see myself with beautiful lighting. I've been just so distracted by my own face this entire time because I have a ring light now. So that's the kind of production value you can get from OBS.
We needed Randy Lutz in his prime. Props are, I'll just say, having done plenty of storefront opera and storefront theater, it is such a short straw to be a props master because you are so mistreated by directors, designers, and it's utterly infuriating. You have to have the patience of Job in order to be a props master. And when you're good at what you do, you should be honored, just as Randy Lutz was, by an organization like USITT for the work that you have done.
You know who's out of patience, George, is Sir Simon Rattle.
He's done and he gone.
When he was going to go from, he was the music director at Berlin. He did sign a contract to be the music director at London Symphony Orchestra. That was in 2015, a lifetime ago, where there was no Brexit. The LSO was supposed to be getting a brand new concert hall to replace the Barbican, which he had previously described as serviceable. Which, George, you speak British. That is a killer burn. Like, I'm surprised they didn't just raise the theater right that minute.
I just think that Brexit kicks in and Rattle is like, well, if Brexit's happening, there's going to be a Retexit happening. That was my good joke I had written in my notes, and I was waiting for those groans. I feed on them.
Awesome. So.
Terrible. Director Elijah Wyszynski passing away at 75. I've seen some of his productions on film of the standard repertoire, and they are so moving. They're so well directed and so well designed. He was the mentor to one of my mentors as a director, and I'm just so crushed that he is not around to be working anymore. Let's wrap this show up.
Good call. Bad call on Opera Box Score.
Thanks for hanging out with us wherever you are and however you're listening for Opera Box Score. Good call, bad call. Oliver Camacho, what do you got?
I know we're sour on the Met, but this Saturday, the Metropolitan broadcast, the noon broadcast, is going to be the debut of Leontine Price and Franco Corelli in that iconic broadcast of Il Trovatore. It's
fire.
It's on fire, so you've got to listen. I'm sorry if we hate the Met, but you can't hate the Met for this moment.
Matt Cummings.
Can't hate Leontine Price. You also can't hate Lawrence Brownlee, where you can get a double feature of Lawrence Brownlee this weekend. On Friday the 22nd, Houston Grand is going to broadcast Larry Brownlee and Friends, and then on the 23rd, Opera Rome has I Puritani with him and Jessica Pratt, a concert version. So those are things I'm going to be checking out.
Weston Williams, I got your good call. You're well lit for the first time.
Thank you.
Dallas Opera Network. Ashlee Hardgrave.
I'm on Pardon Watch 2021. As of this taping, there are 40 hours left in the current administration. But by the time this drops, we will know the extent of the most recent batch of presidential pardons. We're taping on Mondays. We don't know yet. But in the meantime, I will just say congratulations to Lil Wayne.
That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk radio show about opera. Our announcer is Norm Woodel. He's at normwoodel.com, NORMWOODEL.com. On Facebook, search for Opera Box Score. Be sure to share and comment on our posts. On Twitter and Instagram, we're at Opera Box Score. Write to us at our website, operaboxscore.com. Podcast version of our show available on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. The views and opinions expressed on Opera Box Score are solely those of the show's creative team. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of the accounts of this show without the express written consent of Opera Box Score would be totally cool. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio and video editor is Weston Williams. For our guest, Will Liverman, and your co-hosts, Matt Cummings and Ashlee Hardgrave, I'm George Cederquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as power is peacefully transferred. We're back with an we are back with an all-new show next week when we go inside the huddle with David T. Little and Jonathan McCulloch of Opera Philadelphia's production of Soldier Songs. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more acronyms. Join us.